All right, welcome back. Now, at this point, we're going to start talking about getting ready to stitch and putting reinforcement tape. And if you're not caught to the very first videos and stuff, this is a lot of these videos I'm wanting to do for the beginner, to show him that he can do this at home in his garage. He's bought him a Kit Fox or whatever, type plane, Super Cub, whatever, experimental, or a lot of times, just because it's a certified plane, if you've got a friend that's a mechanic or an IA, most guys will work with you, and as long as you keep them involved and you be doing the work along with them, and they're signing off everything, when it's a certified plane, you really need to work with your IA and know that you're doing everything on the legal side of it. But really just want to show a lot of tricks. There's so many times I sit on the phone over there, and I enjoy talking with customers and when they have a problem and showing them what I've learned, but it's hard to show it over the phone, and that's why I've had a lot of requests for some type of video showing the little end parts, because a lot of us guys take it for granted. We talk about reinforcement tape, or the reinforcement tape that goes on, or the stitch tape, and you take a guy that wants to cover a plane, but he's like, I'm trying to have to learn all these terms and stuff. So I'm just explaining exactly what each of these items do. On a plane, your ribs here, we're going to end up stitching. And on a Citabria or an Aeronica or one of those type planes, you'll notice they had the PK holes, and a lot of them go ahead and drill them for the ABO rivets or whatever. But the main thing is you got to refer to your aircraft speed and look in your 4313 on your spacing of your stitching. It's according to what your stall speeds and your tops, your V&Es, everything of the aircraft is going to determine. You take a J3, it can get out there really wide, because you're looking at an 80, 90 mile an hour airplane. Or if you're covering the tail of a P-51 Mustang, they're fixing to be like that, or like a stagger wing Beech or something. You've got to go by that spacing. But just putting a stitch around this, the fabric, regular Synchronite, Superfly, or the Dacron fabrics, if someone's never been around it, you can even start a tear and you just can't hardly tear it. But an actual stitch, when you're stitching it and you're pulling it, it actually can cut the fabric a little bit. And this is a product that, and ours, Airtech, we buy a product that has a little bit of a weave, kind of a cloth type feel, and it has a sticky back to it. That sticky back's just going to be there long enough to have it down until it gets stitched, because it's going to get glue over it and everything else. Other companies, I've seen some that looked almost like a heavy packing tape, that looks like almost kind of got fibers in it, that looks like it's kind of a brown. And I've used those, they work really well. You want to look at the width of your rib, and we sell 1/4, 3/8, or 1/2. You want that to be as wide or a little less. If you put one a little too wide on it and then you start stitching, you've got, if you're looking at it from the side here, if this is your top of your rib, and then you put a piece of tape that's too wide, but your stitching needle goes right down the side, you're either having to go through the tape, or your tape is going to, when you cinch it up, your tape's going to bunch in. So you want that tape to sit on top but not be hanging off the side. So just determine how wide. I know on Piper and different ones, you'll have some ribs that's down there like 1/4 inch. So you'll need 1/4 inch to cover that one. I think this is about 3/8. So this one is looks like it's going to be about right for it. What I like to do to start out, you can see through it. Sometimes if you lay it up to where you put a light on the ground, that you can see up through it. But for what we're doing, you can pretty well see through the fabric. I like to take my finger down and push it down like that. Put a mark right at the edge. Do about maybe 4 spots like that. All right, we're ready, and me and my cousins just become kind of sticklers on just putting marked edges. I mean, I can take this and pull it out here, and I can stick it right there and stick it down and do my thumb that way, and it's going to work. But sometimes, right now, it's going to show your pre-cover inspection on all aircraft is one of the most important. We all want to start rolling out that fabric and get to that point really fast, but on a legal plane, there has to be a logbook sign off that pre-inspection was done. And those are the times when you really want to check that all these ribs are straight, your wings are cross-laced, and all the ribs are pulled straight, because you're up here getting ready to stretch, and I've got a straight edge here, and I pull it down, and all of a sudden I find out that my rib has got some weird bow in it. Well, I've got to follow that. And then there, you put a straight tape over it, but that goes back to your pre-cover inspection. These are all pretty straight, but I did my perimeters in 3 spots. So these are going to line up pretty good all the way across. Now, if there was a little bit of a movement, let's just say I put that up, I missed that one just a little. Let's just say I put that up there and it was running off. Then I would put me a mark from here to here. Then I'd put me a mark from there to there and there to there. So I would, in that way I know I'm following that contour. We're going to put a thin coat of glue, or I always like to put a thin coat of glue. And like on the top of a wing where it's got a curve, all of your fabric is pulled down on that rib. You've got a glue base under it. Put a little thin glue, and that'll get that fabric started kind of sticking to the rib, and that way when you're stitching, it's not kind of coming up. Whenever we get ready to do a wing, I'll show you. A lot of times you can flip it and you get some long leaded weights, like in bags or something, on the flat bottom of the wing. You're going to try to glue it, and like right here is probably going to do it. It's not going to want to stick here. And that's not a problem. I just want to get a little thin glue base in there to set that fabric, and you could hold it down like this with weights until it dried, but when you start stitching, it's going to kind of pop loose again. So once you stitch it down, then it's holding, and we're putting our glue on it. So you want to mark out all of your tapes like that, and this won't get a stitch on this vertical part, or you won't be stitching around just these open areas. So with that said, I'll go ahead and get these marked, and that's just getting it marked and ready for your reinforcement tape. Now I've got these marked, and next step, and like I told Kelly a while ago, I'm not going to tell you if I marked the other side. It's only for me to know. We're just doing the videos on here. I like to use the thin glue, and like I mentioned in the first video, maybe on the second, if your glue's been sitting a long time, you'll get to where you'll see kind of the consistency of it. This one's probably still thin enough to do what I'm going to do, but as the reducer evaporates out, your glue will slowly get thicker. This is not really precise as far as being neat, but I still always like to be neat. Take the straight edge of this brush, and I like to just run a little pass of glue, almost just pushing a thick little bead of glue. Now it run out a little bit, that's fine, because we're going to have a tape out here. But now when we get ready to do the tape, that's when we're laying it up on the edge, and that's where I told you I like buying these brushes that's kind of got a cut edge on them. If like this one's cut this way, I'm left-handed, or if the other guy, rather than a straight, edge, it just seems to work better. So I like to just put a layer of glue down on that, and on this, it's not sticking. I can see it getting dark brown right there. We're not really trying to make it stick, because, that one might stick. It looks like it's staying brown, but you're going to have a little hollow spot. My purpose is not really trying to stick it down, but I am getting glue set just in that center where I'm going to be sticking the reinforcement tape. It has sort of a sticky back, and that's really just to keep it in place until we start stitching, and then it gets cinched down with the stitching. So you just kind of get that on, and this will need to dry before we go to the next step. All right, I got these marked, got some glue on. They're dry to the touch, so we get ready to start putting the reinforcement tape on. What I like to do, use straight scissors. There's no need of a paint on this. When you're looking down on the top of your say your big end or your back end, there's no need in having the reinforcement tape wrap around this end, or whatever, because your first stitch, let's say this is going to be a 2-inch stitch. You can, I've seen people go, okay, I'm going to go 2 inches, and that's going to be my first stitch. Or some people will go, I'm going to split that and go 1 inch, then 2 inch, 2 inch. A lot of times you'll see how it's going to turn out down here, and you may fudge that just a little, as long as you're within your spacing to be legal for your speed of your airplane. But if whatever you do, let's just say if this fabric wasn't here and I'm looking straight down on it, and that bar inside, just an imaginary line, not all the way up on this tip. wherever it is, I always like to start out, and you can just eyeball a good 90 degree. I always start out, make sure my tape's 90 degree, pull out some. Wherever I'm going to start this at, a lot of times if you got someone on the other side of the wing, it works out really good. Wherever I'm going to start it, I want all of them to start there. You know, my first plane, it was out here, and some was back here, and some was over here, you know, and like in my first video, it's all about the neatness, and a lot of this stuff is going to completely cover with that shiny paint, and you'll never see some of these little things you do. But, you know, when your buddies come by, or, you know, you never know. It may be that one project that you're going to do, and in 10 years from now, or 15 or 20 years from now, you're in my position. You have a shop, and you're recovering aircraft for a living. And when people come by and they see the time that you take, there's just something about that neatness that really counts, especially when a customer comes and he sees that you're taking the time on being real, paying a lot of attention to the small stuff. Once you stick it down, kind of rub it down a little bit, and sometimes this tape will have the, you know, as you're taking it off, it may have a little string or something. Don't worry about it till you get it down, and take a razor blade maybe and take that off. But when you come back to here, in the past we've had trouble with putting it down and then come back later and all of a sudden the tape, you know, had tried to come loose. And my cousin come by and mentioned to me to make sure I mentioned to y'all. Brian said that a lot of times, especially on a wing, you stick it down and you're trying to really get it straight, and you start pulling it and stretching it. When you pull it and stretch it and cut it, you've got it under tension, and that sometimes will want to release it back. So I just want to hold just enough tension that it's straight. And you can look down on it, and since this is a straight rib, they don't have no bow in it, we're just going to take it down all at once and try to line it up in the lines that we've got. Now, if you did have a rib that's got something crazy going on, you're going to want to pull it, touch it on the rib, touch it on the rib. You're going to want to follow that rib. When I get back here, I'm going to do the same thing I did up there. Wherever I'm going to cut these, I want them all to be cut at the same thing. You don't hardly ever see it, but I like to, since this is at an angle, I like to actually have my end cut at an angle, just like the end of that bar. That way it looks like it's blending right in. Now I have an angle here. I need to get rid of that angle. Go back to the straight. And make sure you waste plenty of this, so you have to call Airtech back and order more. I'm just kidding. Start it at the same spot. Hold it down. Get some of it undone. Get your first couple inches. Rub it pretty good. I like to go ahead and unroll it, get it unstuck from the roll till it's out past it. Look down at everything. Looks like it's working fine. Don't pull it very tight. And lay it down. I've covered some planes before using the stitch process, and as you know, they use the poly brush or the paint on there, and for some reason, I don't know about their tape. You know, the tapes, we've have all kind of tapes in our shop next door, but it's something about putting this down on the pink. I have to really rub it down. You would think that would really stick good, but there's just something about this sticky in the pink. You have to sometime either maybe re-wet the paint or something to get it to stick down. But once it's there, it sticks really great, and it's just, I don't know, it's just the characteristics of it. But this is going down on that glue little pass that we made, and it does okay. It will stick to the raw dry fabric and do fine. It's just I like to have that little bit of glue under it. So that's what you do. And at that point, I'll get all of the tapes down. All right, I've got the tapes down. One thing I didn't mention before. Just, you know, spend a little time and really bedding them in. At that point, you look for any little, you know, pieces of thread or something coming out the side. You can take a razor. Be very careful that you don't cut your fabric. Scissors sometimes won't get close enough. Get them all rubbed down. Like I said, it's going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but as in the first video, don't use any ink pens doing this marking. A pencil, you know, works best. Your ink pen's going to try to bleed through your primer and everything and cause you problems later. I'm going to stop right now. I don't have a Aeronica or another tail that does the rivets, but let's just say this was an Aeronica wing or a tail, you know, and the pre-drilled holes are there. There's a big controversy on whether you go back with a PK. There's 99% of the planes that come through here has been recovered. It's got rivets in it. I think it equates to the as good as or better. We sell the rivets for, when they put the rivet in. I know that a PK screw will get down a lot tighter, and a little bit lower profile. But make sure before you cover and you're doing your pre-inspection that your rivet's going to go through the hole. You don't want to be trying to drill them all out after the fact. You want to do all that before you cover the wing. But let's say you've got your holes opened up to what's your size rivet. You've deburred them, everything's clean, all your metal's blown away from your wing, and you've covered. At this point, those holes are there, and you can usually see even through this and see the dark hole. But I like to, on a wing or even on this, if you'll scoot out here and put a big halogen lamp or something on the ground, on whichever side it needs to shine, you'll see that light just really shine right through those holes. You can take an X-Acto knife point and you can point a little X in that, and then when you do your rivet, you can force it and get it in there. But what I like to do, I don't have one here, but a wood burning iron tool or something, and a lot of times they'll have a little straight pointy needle in them. Let it get really warm and put that little straight needle in there. Once it gets hot, you can just do a little fine melt, and when you melt it, you've seared all the threads. They're not going to fray on you, and just burn those holes in, and that rivet will just fall right in the hole, and it's got a good little burned edge and everything. So if you're doing a wing that's stamped, at that point, that's one way I've used to see that hole and just burn those holes in. But on this one, it'll be stitched, and I'm just going to imagine that this plane's going to call for, say, a 3-inch stitching. And on a wing, we'll get to that when we do a wing, but a lot of times on a wing, I put a light underneath because you got a lot of cables and a lot of action going on inside of a wing. You may have cables, and you don't want your thread to get around a cable, and now you're going to saw it in two. We're going to show the stitching process, and for the beginners, the stitch, is a knot that if something else breaks, it's not unraveling. So they're all standing on their own. But a lot of times there's diagonal braces and stuff that's going to hinder you, and you put that big light under, and you're looking down. And when we get to the inspection rings, that's another thing you can reaffirm, where you need your inspection rings by looking up through the fabric with a bright light. But let's say this one's going to be a 3-inch, and like on a wing, you may start out, let's say I'm going to go a 3-inch, and I'm not sure where the end of this bar is, so I'm going to use this as my starting point. And let's just say I'm going to start out here, and I'm going to start off at, say, 2 inches and put my mark. Well, on a wing, your spacing may go down through there, and you'll look. Well, if you end up at the end going, man, I need a 1/4 inch to really be that correct spacing, or I'm going to have my last spacing just crimped up a little bit too much, you can kind of shift that whole set of stitches, wherever, as long as you've got that spacing at the ends. And then when you do that, I always like that spacing to be the same all the way down the wing. There's been times that we've actually, pulled a straight edge or a chalk line, and get that first line set exactly straight. We'll go through some other little techniques on a wing as far as the top's got a longer curve than the bottom, spacing the top out a little different so all your stitches are straight up and down, but that'll be at a later date. I'm not really going to worry about that shift here because we have a curve, so it's going to end at a different spot anywhere. I don't ever really like to start from this end because that's just going to throw every one of them off kind of crazy. So let's just say we're going to go with a 3-inch increment. I'll come out here 2 inches. Come up and just catch my marks at my 3, my 6, my 9. Mark everything the same way. Start at your same base point, other side, and mark everything the same way.